Hello, and welcome to the EDM Council and Security webinar titled Enabling Safe Use of Generative AI with Data Controls. Mike Meriton, co-founder and COO of the EDM Council, will be kicking off the presentation. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Yolan, and welcome to our EDM webinar audience, and happy Wednesday, everyone. This is a great topic, and it's getting more and more attention. So why are we here? Generative AI and technologies like GPT, and originally it was OpenAI released back in November, ChatGPT, are bound to disrupt the way we work, live, and play. And on one hand, it enables organizations a way to leverage the incredible power of data. But on the other hand, the use of data carelessly with these large language models can put the organization at significant risk. So in this webinar, we would like to explore the best practices for safe and responsible use of data within generative AI and innovating all the key data control obligations and assuring that they're operational. So in this webinar, let me go ahead and introduce our panelists for today. First, it's Daniel Kendzior, who is the Global Data and AI Security Lead at Accenture. And a quick bio on Daniel. Welcome, Daniel. Good to have you on today's EDM webinar.
Thanks, Mike. Happy to be here.
So I'm going to give the audience a little bit about yourself. So Daniel is a cybersecurity strategy and architecture leader at Accenture Securiti, where he primarily works with large life science, health, and industrial clients. He's had extensive experience in driving large-scale information security transformations, also deeply passionate about orchestrating organizations so that they can integrate cybersecurity into their core architecture of products and services and transform cyber into a business enabler. So Daniel, great to have you and your experience here. Let me introduce our other panelist, and this is Rehan Jalil, who is the CEO of Securiti. Really exciting background, Rehan, and good to have you. Thank you. It's great also that Securiti is advocating this webinar to get this good word out, because there's a lot of companies really working hard on how do we leverage and implement these technologies. But a little more, Rehan, about your background for the audience. He was formerly the Senior Vice President and General Manager for Cloud Security at Symantec. So, and Symantec is a really well-known industrial security provider in the marketplace. So, Rehan, great to have you. And also to kick this webinar off, do you mind sharing with the audience? And we've heard the term generative AI. We've heard about ChatGPT and GPT. Can you baseline for the audience? Some may say, well, what is that? And some may be working with it right now. So there's a big gap between how much people know about this topic. So if we can get everyone up to speed, that would be really helpful. So Rehan, over to you.
Mike, first of all, thank you so much for hosting myself and Daniel and this webinar. Really excited to be here. It's a great topic. In fact, almost a daily discussion at this point. So let's set the context a little bit. Truly, at this point, we're living in the big bang era of data. Like, data is not only growing massively in its volume, but it's expanding. And in fact, there is a tremendous value that could be created with this data, and organizations all across actually trying to use this data to create value for themselves and their customers. More recently, if you may have this at this point has become almost like a consumer name. The generative technologies based on transformers and pre-trained transformers is the one where you can take all the symbolic information, the text and the symbolic information that may be there, to of course create new value from it, and that has been talk of the day. And the companies that we are seeing clearly that the companies are looking to totally revolutionize the way many of their functions, including the way they interact with their customers, the way they offer the customer service, the customer support to the customers, the way they do the finance or the marketing or the HR. Like, each and every function within an organization is bound to be revolutionized, because there's so much data and the text that is available, which can be utilized to create new value, especially with the some of the most latest technologies within the GPT side of things. Whether you use from something that's provided by the cloud providers, or there's a ton of very interesting open source that is available, regardless of which direction the organizations would go. There's unquestionably there is going to be transformation happening within the organizations. At the same time, the data that is there, companies are looking to actually offer the value to their end customers, not just that they do their internal functions, but to the end customers. How much more value, how the products will evolve, how the interactivity with the products will evolve. Would we always look at a screen, aim something and click, and that's the way we're going to interact with the products, or we can just simply converse? Or the products would offer insights automatically to the customers. That's clearly up for revolution. And we're seeing that. That's a daily discussion that's going on. In fact, there is a great audience here. Perhaps we might do a bit of a poll question. How many of the audience are actually on this journey? I'll give it back to you for that.
So Rehan, this is a great question for our audience. We're going to have this pop up on your screen. It is a single choice, which is where is your company on its generative AI journey? Not at all, and that's okay. It is newer technology. Number 2 is planning, or number 3, already using extensively or actively using in your organization. So take a moment and let's see where our audience is in this continuum of leveraging this new capability in the marketplace. We'll give it a moment or 2 longer and we'll get the results. And Rehan, I'm going to be asking you if these results surprise you in any way. Daniel can maybe jump in and comment on it as well. All right, let's get the responses. Interesting. The number 1 choice, 56% of companies represented on this webinar are planning the use of generative AI. A third, or 34%, are not using it at all or not doing anything yet on it. And then 9%, 1 out of 10 approximately, are actually now actively using it. So Rehan, does this surprise you in any way?
It's actually interestingly very consistent. I don't know how many people participated in it, but it's very consistent with what we've seen in terms of discussions that we're having, our teams are having on a daily basis. It's very consistent. There is a lot of people who are in the planning phase, and adoption is, of course, needless to say, is very early. The only thing is, of course, is extensively. That part is a little surprising because it's very early journey. I'll pass it on to Daniel. Based on what
Daniel, any thoughts? Does this map to your frontline experiences?
Yeah, definitely. Most of our clients definitely in the planning stage. The only comment I would have is I would say there's a number of clients I have that might corporate wise say we're not planning to use it, but when you look at their employees, everyone's trying to experiment with it in both personal use cases and starting to kind of fringe into work as well. So that convergence of what I do on Friday and Saturday with what I do Monday morning is also coming very rapidly, which is both exciting as well as an opportunity for more governance.
Yeah, I was going to say similarly. I was just at a Midwest CDO and security conference, and there's a lot of dialogue, and there are some companies right now that are actively implementing POCs around this capability. So I bet you if we do this question every month for the next 12 months, we'll start seeing slightly different results. So well, I think it's a hot topic, that's for sure. So Rehan, back to you.
Awesome. I think so. We were just talking about the generative AI and the models that underlie the generative AI. They almost mimic, or in some ways, probably even better than human brain in terms of compression of the amount of data they can actually be trained through. And the amount of compression, in some ways, it's simply a numerical representation of the data that's sitting inside those neural nets. For instance, the human mind has close to 100 trillion nodes, as compared to current models have 1 trillion. They still actually are able to quote unquote memorize and numerically represent in these models. And then, of course, when you ask these questions, they can generate all the knowledge on the fly, right? That's really is the concept there. The issue really is that the data that could be given to these models, it is intermingled with sensitive information. It has all kinds of sensitive information in there. If you feed that information to these models without controls, there could be significant issues. And why really that is? The large models, they can easily, quote unquote, they don't formally memorize it, but they can generate that information back. And if you feed the data irresponsibly, there is almost no easy way to kind of have it be forgotten. For instance, one I would say analogy would be that if I were to tell somebody sensitive information, a human, and then turn around and say, can you please forget right now that information I just told you? Human mind doesn't forget like that, right? So these neural nets, not easy for you to say, feed the information, then after sometimes you just forget it. It can come out based on how you prompt on the other side, how you ask the question on the side. It can actually come out on the other side. So fundamentally, before you feed all the information, any of the information to these neural nets, it will be highly irresponsible to not actually have full understanding of what data is going into these models, not having full controls on what kind of data should never go by intent or without intent, because once it goes in there could be some ways to actually extract it out. Implicitly or explicitly prompting, you can extract that out. And there clearly have been exfiltration attacks on the training data. So what do you do with that? What kind of information is even more paramount now before you feed the information to these models? The first, I think we have all been talking about the importance of good inventory of data. Like, where is my data? First of all, if you want to create value from the data, you need to actually have full inventory of where the data exists. And of course, what kind of data is actually there, which means put all kinds of classification of data, labeling of data, tagging of data, so you know that if this data is picked upon and being passed on to the models, it's not going to create an issue, or it's going to create an issue so you can put some kind of controls before it goes into the neural nets. The other information is becoming even more important is consent. You may have a ton of data, you may have classified it, you may have labeled it, but you may not have consent to actually use this data for that purpose. So using and having clear understanding of what consent is there and orchestrating becomes actually quite important. And lineage, why it's important, because you may see the data, but when you collected all this data, the sources of collection and what consent was there, under what conditions data was collected is important, even more important now. What global regulations actually apply based on the residency of the individuals, based on where the data is right now, based on where the model is going to be utilized, because laws are fast evolving. Like these data protection laws are fast evolving. There are already laws that exist, but even more, and how you can utilize within AI, they're actually fast evolving. And I think beyond the external laws prohibiting the use of data, many organizations would have data ethics policies. As Daniel was saying, that yes, companies will define that these are our guidelines. So there could be some global laws, but then companies that are unquestionably already in the process of defining the guidelines, what data can go in there. Can my code go in there? Many companies are taking a stance the code cannot go in there till they actually figure things out, that what's the legality, what's the IP protection, what's the if they utilize the code that is being generated, would have any kind of IP issues, and so that is your internal controls which need to be honored beyond the global laws. And the retention, maybe the data is supposed to be deleted after a certain time. If it goes into the model, how do you delete it? And if you can delete the data, can you actually send the data to the model? These are all certainly open questions in the almost discussions that are going on almost on a daily basis. And So the question again, or there would be that what are the kind of things that you can put in place as the not just the knowledge about data, but more automation of controls around data, and that of course we will talk about in the panel also. And while we talk about controls, data intelligence driven controls, maybe I think it would be a good point to actually highlight the charter for CDMC and the controls it enables. So Mike, I'm going to pass it back to you to give a little bit of introduction on CDMC.
Rehan, thank you for bringing this up. And this is good news for our EDM webinar audience, which is you may recognize the acronym CDMC. If you don't, it stands for the Cloud Data Management Capability Framework. And this kicked off about 2.5 years ago, where 100 companies got together as an EDM Council work group to collaborate on building essentially a cloud blueprint for comprehensive data risk controls and automations. And after 1.5 years of work and 750 meeting, and Rehan, your team was very involved in this, so it was quite a big effort, 45,000 hours of effort, by the way, which was huge. CDMC was published, and there's been thousands and thousands of downloads. And here's what it is for you. We're going to put it into chat, and I think we just did that, a link. It is a free license, so anyone, whether you're a member or non-member, this is yours to use. We, of course, encourage membership with the council for training and having your company be involved, but we strongly recommend you download this. And here's the really nice thing. There are 14 key controls, and Rehan, you mentioned quite a few of them in your last few slides. And good news, we've been seeing companies like Securiti leading the charge, and some of the cloud companies to embed these controls directly into their platform. But it is a blueprint. So whether you're a CDO or part of the CDO function or data governance, a CTO, a chief privacy officer, a chief risk officer, a chief security officer, all of those perspectives were built into this blueprint. And one of the big things it does for companies is it removes the debate. And Rehan, you and I have been in meetings, and I'm going to guess Daniel as well, where do we need a catalog? And should we be classifying data? This says absolutely yes. Any data being ingested into cloud should be cataloged and classified. Otherwise, you don't know the sensitivity of your data, and you are taking risk. So these are controls, and this guidance and this governance is all available for you. Just download it. It's good to go, and more to come. So Rehan, thank you for letting us get the good word out, and back to you.
Yeah, so Mike, I think maybe we can go into some of the open discussions. I know you had a very, very specific questions that you wanted Daniel and myself to address, and I think it'd be great to actually go over those. And
I think ironically, they follow the sequence of the CDMC framework, so which is great. The really first question I have is that, data has become much more important in the era of generative AI. In other words, if the large language models are defined to your data sets, then there's critical issues around, is that data have sensitive, does it have bias, are there ethical issues? So let's start with that first thing. How should companies have a better inventory of data and to classify it better? It is one of the things inside of the framework. Rehan, do you want to kick that off and then over to Daniel?
Happy to. I think the very first thing is to actually even know where all the data systems are. Because
you're winding it back even further to say where is our data?
Exactly. I mean, just like network guys have like a NOC, the data guys almost need a data command center at this point.
Right.
They will need to actually fully understand, like, this is my landscape, all my data systems, because new data systems can come up from open source. If developers can be bringing up, in their test environments, you need to actually first even understand where is my data systems. Now, based on that, data could be structured data. These systems could be for unstructured data. It could be your data lakes and objects that are sitting in there. Could be data in flight. Especially with large streaming systems, data could be actually moving. Having that clarity actually is important. Then you have to classify this data. Now, classification has to be automated, which means the modern classification technologies should automatically tell what type of data it is, whether it's sensitivity by the PII, whether it is confidential information, whether it's a code, whether it is data with certain kind of